I said, imagine being inside right now. That would suck.
Inside a building?
Yeah.
Like an office?
Yeah. Like, I feel free out here. I think like our working space is about 2 acres back here, 2 or 2.5.
Okay.
These 4 sections are already prepped for next year, and these 2 are planted with garlic. We should have about 1,000 bulbs of red Russian next July. I've been working here for 1 season, and we've been working towards shifting from conventional to regenerative organic farming styles. My first thought when I saw the backfield, I was excited for the challenge, and because we had such a big space with so much potential.
It sounds simple, that's what you think. But love can walk through fire without. The backfield was a real challenge. It was very dense clay. It was very compacted. It grew weeds well, but that was about it.
I was surprised at how many weeds grew in the clay and the dirt because I thought it was inhabitable, but.
My first reaction to the backfield where we're gonna try to grow produce was how? The field was pretty neglected in the sense that it was an alfalfa field. It was planted for alfalfa years ago, and so it's just kind of been cycling and producing and not cut and maintained. And then the soil structure has just kind of collapsed, so it was just clay.
The biggest issue was probably the clay. It was deeply, deeply compacted, and there was cracking in the soil, or in the dirt. I wouldn't even call it soil, it was dirt. And some of the cracking would go into like 2 feet underground of like hard, crusty clay.
So our first step, knowing where we wanted to go, and to be fair, we didn't really know what grow system would work or what would benefit us. We wanted to try mulch rows, and we wanted to try a limited amount of mulch rows, and what we had to do is bring in some topsoil, bring in some equipment, a tiller, disker, etc., to try and, there's a frog in here, to try and loosen up the soil, to kind of create something that roots could actually attach to, deep dive into, and give a plant every opportunity for success that it could, especially knowing what we started with and what we needed to make that happen.
It was such a big task for you coming into this, like, I don't want to say blind, not blind, but it was like...
Well, pretty much. I was pretty much blind. I mean, I had 1 year of experience. And my experience was already on a set field that had beautiful, perfect soil, and they had been running for 6 years. So I learned how to care for the plants in a perfect environment, and then I came to the most unideal environment and how to figure out how to make it, how to bring it back to life, I guess. But yeah, you can see like this kind of shows like the structure I was talking about. The roots. I needed answers of what kind of elements we were dealing with in the dirt, so we did soil testing. And I think we did probably about 10 different tests in different sections, beds, pathways, and then kind of front, greenhouse, trellis, strawberries, flower field, and then took those results, found out what we were lacking, and then decided on certain ground cover crops that were rich in those elements. And then we seeded those plants and then let the plants do the work. Any plant is technically a cover crop because it's covering the ground. The crop is covering the ground, but you do that because certain crops bring in nitrogen or calcium, phosphorus, potassium. It just gives the space for life to grow. So if there's nothing in the ground, there's not going to be anything under the ground because it's too hot, it's too cracked, there's no water. And then you have the cover crop, which gives you shade, like even water distribution, even temperatures, organic matter. I had to pick fall, cool season crops. But I also picked a lot of root crops. We did a lot of carrots. I'd put carrots in probably every section because I wanted that carrot to get into the ground and break up the clay. Yeah, we did that hay mulching, which after we put the overhead irrigation system in, it turned it into grass because there's grass seed in hay if the hay is organic and untreated. And then that also just put more roots into the ground in our pathways, which then distributed the water even further underground. So not only we had that top blanket layer covering, but then we had even distribution underground.
And another major undertaking to just from square one as a step to take with the backfield was understanding that we had no irrigation. We had no water close to where we were. We had no ability to actually execute watering or routine or anything like that. And so the first step was to actually go ahead and do the full perimeter implementation of 2-inch water lines. So now our entire backfield is fully enclosed with a 2-inch water line. And now I can actually build off of that to implement other watering strategies for the different crops, different beds, different tree lines, different things that we're hoping to kind of move forward towards. Another big learning curve too was in the mulch rows that we had and knowing our drip lines from one end to the other. I can't tell you how much time we spent fixing leaks in the drip lines. And that was from both perhaps the pressure being too high and also animals like voles or other things kind of stepping on the lines or biting the lines and basically causing ruptures. And that means everything from that point down doesn't get watered properly. So it's something you had to be on all the time.
I had a lot of learning curve surprises. We had our drip lines were kind of put too deep underground, so they were actually decomposing underground, and there was moles chewing through them, so we had flooding in certain sections, low water pressure in other sections, like beginning of the field, the piping comes from here, this whole section is flooded and overwatered, then slowly it gets less pressure, and then we have dry sections over here. So I was constantly turning on and off valves to try to improve the pressure, but there's really nothing you can do when the drip lines are slightly underground and then under that plastic mulch layer. I was surprised to learn that we had a whole wildflower field of chamomile that popped up, which was pretty cool.
So the chamomile crop, that was probably a very pleasant surprise in the sense that we had a crop that was extremely successful, required limited involvement from staff, at least with regards to growing, very minimal watering, and it was something that just kind of happened. So it was a happy surprise. When that was in full bloom, we were able to harvest, we were able to harvest a ton of seeds, and we could actually, provide a fairly successful chamomile crop now within controlled parameters. But that was a successful and happy surprise this past season because that was the in-between time where we were waiting for our crops to be ready, but they were just growing and we were kind of doing other things. So it was a happy surprise in the sense you look out in the backfield, you have beautiful flowers, you have a full crop of chamomile, and it was very nice to see.
My favorite crop would probably be the loofahs. Because I wanted to grow them last year on my other farm too, but I didn't. And then this year we did. And I actually didn't even know that we had loofahs planted until I saw like a vine growing on the ground. And I was like, oh, this should probably be trellis. So we trellised it and then we found loofahs.
There's so many of them.
There was way more. We processed probably like 100 of those already.
Because the fiber is so strong and resilient to movement, etc., even as dry, right? We get this loofah.
So at the beginning of the year, we had 8 long rows, or no, I should say 8 long beds, and they were super spread out. So we had probably like 10-foot pathways in between each row. Yeah, I guess I could have brought that up as a challenge, was just like the general field layout that we were dealing with. So super, super long beds. There was 8 long beds with the plastic mulching on top, and then there's about like 10-foot pathways in between each bed. So that's a lot of wasted space. So after doing the cover cropping, after adding organic matter and organic fertilizers, Kevin actually tilled the whole backfield, which is not something that's recommended for doing because you're killing everything and then you're taking out the little root structure that we built underground. But we kind of had to because we had that heavy cracking. And we didn't even kill like the plants that we had. We left them in the ground and then just kind of like pushed them into the ground so they could kind of decompose underground and create little like, I guess, nutrient pockets, if that makes sense, to decompose.
You know, we truly believe to not have any sprays or things on our farm. We try to grow everything as organically as possible, as true to form that plants just growing out in nature as we can. And so the challenge with that is knowing what we were starting with, knowing what amendments we did, and also using methods that might be a little bit more mechanical than an organic farmer would do. You know, tilling and turning over the soil and destroying kind of that biome that exists in that soil is a step that is unfortunately that first step into kind of creating that ecosystem that we were trying to get going. What a beautiful day here in the sunny Okanagan. And today is the exciting day where essentially the field will get its last till and turnover ever for the foreseeable future as we start our organically grown regenerative farming practices where we no longer have to incorporate heavy equipment or you know, mechanical mixture of soil, etc. But one thing we're doing before we get this whole situation mixed up is we are adding charcoal to our field. And charcoal is a huge carbon sink, but also moisture aficionado and micro hotel for bacteria and microorganisms, and you name it. There's nothing better to add into a field than biochar. And people say, well, it's all chunky, how's that gonna work? Well, the moment you mix it, it turns to dust, and that'll combine into the entire field. Now, the last time I tilled this field was this half where we have the cover crop now. And what's really cool is that when you walk in here, and I'm hip deep here, you know, perfect example is looking at the soil looseness, I guess you could say. So I mean, pulling weeds, pulling grass, pulling whatever's in here, super easy, and that saves a lot of time. When you have compacted soil, it makes it really challenging. But look, when you do this, you can stick your fingers in the earth. It's nice and soft, and hopefully I've timed this up right, so when I turn this over again, I'm not dusting out the entire neighborhood. And this is going to be something really special to see once we turn this over and get some more bio material in the soil. So we're laying this biochar out. I got 6 to 8 totes of it, and we make this in-house, so minimal effort, it just breaks apart. We're going to add our compost piles into beds on top of this, and it should make a huge difference. What you're going to see a big difference of too as we work through this is obviously there's a roadway here, which is now going to be turning into a field because we're going to put the roadway over there. But this area here has had the plastics in it for 2 years, which was a mistake. We left it too long. And this area over here was plastics just this year, and it was easier to remove and clean up and make sure that that was all good. But then over there where the cover crop is, where it's waist deep, that's where another amendment to till happened. So we're gonna have 3 tiers of field to work through. And the goal at the end of the day is to make sure that it's all blended, all mixed together, all properly amended, as best as possible to have it be consistent throughout from one end to the other. This one is a doozy, as you can see. There's a bit of a before and after. Free and clear, good to go. Nice. A good 4 hours in, but it went from cover to mulched into the ground. Well, we're plugging along here pretty good, and we are now 5:30 in the evening, and we are just on the last pass of the first run through, meaning that there's a lot more work to do, but it's gone from a pretty ragged field to what you can see behind me. It's just rows and rows and rows of mix. And the next is to go crossways to change that up completely into a properly mixed setup. So off we go, and it takes time, but it'll pay off. We're doing all right. Yeah, so the backfield right now is basically the stage is set. We're ready for the show, per se. So the mulch row method that we used this year, we had, I think, 6 long rows, and our backfield is probably 220 feet long or longer. And so those long rows were both convenient in the sense that you start at one end and work your way to the other, but challenging because the irrigation challenges all the things that we had. So we knew that that system wasn't going to be ideal for our backfield, and it actually didn't really align with our growing practices that we wanted to see. So the plan that we have now in place is instead of long rows, we have beds that are 25 feet by 50 feet. We have 6 rows in each bed. Each bed is identified, beds 1 through 35, and each row can be a different crop. And again, each row or each bed, however we manage it, we can water and isolate and fine tune. So it's a very in-depth, well thought out system. The implementation is next in the sense that how we rotate our crops, what we grow where. You know, we're talking about plants that are just good for one season, or things like asparagus, which are good for 20 years. So it's challenging to kind of come up with a plan of where you want to see things after all the work you've done to kind of create this picture. And now you want to be sure that you know, you want to be sure that when you're putting something in the ground, whether it's long-term or short-term, that there's a plan.
What is this?
It was our previous backfield layout. It looks kind of confusing because we have 1A, 2A, 1B, 2B, all the way down, but it just helped us with what sections we are working on. So one day we had 1A, 2A, and 1B weeding was completed, or compost tea was added, or worm castings. Yeah, this is the new layout that we've put together for next season. You can see it has 35 sections. And then we have the pathways going through each section, roadways surrounding it. And then in here, I'll plan out exactly what crop goes where and when they rotate and why. It has the grow timing, the temperatures, harvest season, planting season, bed number, number of beds per section, plants per row, and then number of rows per bed, spacing and depth, and then plants per bed and plants per section. So then we can take that and kind of get like an estimated weekly yield, and then I know how many plants to plant to supply our store and how many boxes we do for CSA next year. Well, my main goal, I guess, is to add more life and organic matter. So that would improve the nutrient levels in our food. We do that by adding more nutrients to the soil. So everything that we've been doing this year has been going towards that. We started with dirt, We're creating soil, and soil is full of elements and bacteria that we need to survive. Or not even to survive, but to thrive.
Now that we've created that aeration in the soil, will actually allow the plants to like establish roots and keep that soil in a suspension versus a compaction. What am I most proud of? You know, I think the coolest thing is seeing where we started and knowing what we had to do and the steps. And like at first the work is daunting and you're like, oh my goodness, like I don't even know if we're gonna get there for next season. So we've reached the goal of where we wanted to get to this year, knowing where we've come from and what we started with, which was essentially a clay floor, to now soil that I can stick my hand in. That's probably the best thing, is just being able to stick your hands in the soil and embrace that dirt and that soil, and knowing that that's now a structure that can provide. And so I hope to pour more life into that back field, knowing that the structure and the work that's gone into it is only going to benefit myself and others in the community and my family with regards to the healthy food it can produce. But also I continue to kind of pour life into that soil, whether it's using worm castings or worm tea and bioactivity and creating that ecosystem in that soil that will truly be something special. And that's what I'm most proud of.
I'd say I'm probably most proud of just creating the environment for life, building like life, building something that's sustainable for generations to come. It does take a lot from you, but it gives more to you than you could understand. And I mean, that has to do with like electromagnetics and just being grounded, being in the elements like we're meant to be in. We're not meant to live in concrete, artificial light land. My favorite part is like bridging the gap between life and death. So everything that lives will die and decompose into compost. And then we use the compost to grow life and to feed life and to nourish life. And then that life decomposes and creates a whole new cycle. So that's what I mean by bridging the gap.
Does it start with soil?
It starts from the ground up.